To say a few words, just a personal reflection, so that Prof can take it as a feedback for the class. For the written part, you can also write to Prof Hazizan or write to me, then I can share it with Prof Hazizan, inshallah. So without further ado, we invite our dear Prof Hazizan to continue with the 7th class. Prof.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Brother Shahran, and also our dear colleagues who are attending our class today or tonight, and also those who have been following our lessons since the beginning on the 5th. We started on the 5th of July, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you very much. I will have to be quick tonight because this is the last class and lots of things we have to cover on this topic. So this is a weekly online class on Islam and sociology. I have been entrusted to share some ideas so that I can start the ball rolling in terms of trying to understand the subject as best as possible. And today we have a final lesson, lesson number 7. As I did mention earlier, we have to talk about Islam and sociology. Both are very broad, and in terms of development as well. Through history, we know that Islam has appeared. If we take from the time of the Prophet Muhammad SAW alone, then it has gone through more than 1400 years of development, and 7 weeks with less than 7 hours. It is impossible for us to cover in detail on that, and that is why my approach has always been to highlight only the first level ideas about this, because an idea has layers of what you call is level, layers and layers of the composition of ideas. So tonight what I will do, because we have reached this stage, the 7th class or lesson. So I will quickly go through some of what we have touched in the previous classes for the purpose of linking to the present one. And I will show you how I have structured the lessons for us to see the logical flow of the lesson so that you can gain some ideas, but these ideas are following certain structure, and towards the end you should be able to gain this. So for this last lecture, what I will do, I have here some objectives and questions. Questions follow the objectives, so I will just mention the objectives, and learning outcomes also follow suit. That is, the learning outcomes follow objectives and questions that we are going to answer tonight. So the objectives are 4. Number 1 is for me to highlight major points from the previous lesson. This is more or less recapitulation of what we have learned, and then to explain the notion of integrated knowledge. Right from the very beginning, we have talked about the need for knowledge to be viewed and perceived in an integrated manner, Therefore, we need to talk about the concept of integrated knowledge at the end of this series. What follows after that is to shed light on what we call integrated methodology. So if we have integrated concept of knowledge, then what should be the methodology to gain or to develop integrated knowledge? And finally, how this integrated knowledge and integrated methodology, how are these used in contemporary Muslim society, or how are they implemented in contemporary Muslim society? So let us look at the highlights. For highlights, even though at first I would like to go through some important slides from each series, but realizing that we have limited time, I will only be very, very selective in going through the previous lessons. So let us look at what are the topics that we have covered and also we are going to cover tonight. I have modified a bit tonight's topic or lesson. That is the application of integrated knowledge and methodology in contemporary Muslim society. Inside there, or part of that, I also touch on how perhaps this integrated knowledge can be proposed to be implemented at various levels, institutional level and at research level. This is very broad, so on that. Now, let us look at this one piece or one page slide. I have been trying to make it concise on this. We have started with the lesson 1, whereby we started with introducing Islam and sociology and the relationship between them. We know that Islam is not of similar nature, because Islam is religion, Islam is ideology, whereas sociology is a subject, is a discipline. Therefore, we need to explain that. But our intention is, finally, we would like to then relate to the final lecture, that is, having discussed lesson 2, lesson 3, lesson 4, lesson 5, and lesson 6, we should be able to reach the destination, that is understanding of those things in the which can be reduced to concept of integrated knowledge and also integrated methodology, and how are these applied. So our discussion of At-Tawheed, Islamic worldview, revelation as source of knowledge, and following that was our discussion on what Al-Quran says about society, and also knowledge of society derived from non-revelational sources. So having touched on this, we should be able to now talk about the integrated knowledge, the knowledge that need to be seen in an integrated manner. What does it mean by this? So I will explain this later on. So quickly from a selected slide from each, not from each, but some slides, relevant slides from the previous lecture. I was trying to analogize or to have one kind of equation or analogy. When we talk about knowledge, perhaps we can view knowledge as having structure. But since knowledge is abstract and elusive, perhaps we can have an analogy of knowledge to a tree. A tree has two parts, the part that is hidden and the part that is visible to the naked eyes, and so on. So I mentioned about the importance of the lower part here, because without this one, the upper part of the tree would not be possible even to exist. So that implies certain thing when we talk about knowledge. So that is why we come up with a second illustration or diagram to talk about knowledge, where knowledge we normally look at the application of knowledge, the theory that have been developed in knowledge and so on. But behind that, there are aspects of knowledge which are not quite treated when we talk about this. So we talk about underlying thoughts, where these underlying thoughts might have been influenced by certain ideology. So in the context of Western knowledge, for example, ideologies like secularism, humanism, and others might have influenced the thoughts, the underlying thoughts. By underlying thoughts, I mean here the worldview, the worldview. So the worldview is formed. The ideas about or the worldview is formed based on the ideas or the beliefs about God, about universe, about man, and about knowledge. And when we talk about knowledge, automatically we are actually talking about epistemology. So epistemology, therefore, in the context of my explanation, I consider it to be part of Islamic or part of worldview, right? So using that as a frame, therefore, we try to explain how the underlying thoughts in the form of Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology are influencing our understanding of any subject matter. And here we are talking about man because we are talking about study of society. So this is perhaps one of the way to represent the influence of underlying thoughts on our understanding of any subject matter. So I also mentioned about the importance of Tawheed and how Tawheed has presented us with a kind of picture where there are two orders. In the blue, within the blue is the order of creatures, created beings, and Allah is the what you call this, the one that causes or that caused the existence of the non-God. So God himself has no beginning, no end. Therefore, we can see how the creatures are actually new. There is there are new existence coming from the existence of God, which has no beginning and no end. So on the basis of that, if you look at here, then the domain of human society is this, just to simplify actually, because the other side that is this one is the non-human realities. So we are talking about human realities in sociology. And I have mentioned about a possible approach in understanding human reality from Islamic perspective by firstly understanding the concept of man in the Quran. Then equipped with that concept of man from Revelation, then we can approach or we can then extend our study of the various aspects of society, including, for example, studying of culture, development and social change, social problems, and so on. Right. And then, so that concludes our brief revision of the previous lessons from lesson number 1 until lesson number 6. Now let us look at the application of integrated knowledge and integrated methodology in contemporary Muslim society. Even though the subject is titled Islam and Sociology, but it implies that we need to somehow talk about understanding of society based on certain concept of knowledge, and that concept of knowledge is what we call an integrated concept. An integrated concept of knowledge, in order to realize it, requires a kind of methodology, and we also call this methodology as integrated methodology. So we'll see how this may be explained in from my perspective. When I say from my perspective, I mean there could be other ways, other approaches, other techniques of explaining this, but this could be perhaps one of the ways that I feel convenient to explain. Let us first look at what do we mean by integration. So when we use the word integrated knowledge, integrated methodology, it takes it means a number of things in terms of its implementation. So in reality, when we want to talk about integrated knowledge, there are a number of aspects that need to be integrated. What are them? What are they? So we need to look at this as well. Let us look at, for example, in knowledge, we have the philosophical aspects of that. We have talked about, for example, the foundations of knowledge, which basically basically we are referring to worldview and epistemology. That is philosophical aspect of knowledge. But on the other hand, we also have the technical and methodological aspect of knowledge. We are dealing with the techniques and methods. All these are the other dimensions and parts of knowledge. So how can we integrate these two, which is challenging, of course, but I think we have to be aware of the existence of these two realities of knowledge. Integration also may, in the context of our discussion, may mean, as have been found in the literature, but most of the literature talks about integration of Islamic religious sciences or the methods in Islamic religious science and the techniques. We have learned about, for example, in Usul al-Fiqh, there is one branch or one type of Islamic religious sciences. And also in Ulum al-Hadith, there is science of Hadith. Terminologies and methods and techniques like qiyas and istishab, istislah, and so on, and the ijtihad, the tools of ijtihad, have been very sophisticated when we learn about this, which implies or which reflects the scientific spirit in the development of knowledge, even though that the sciences that have been developed by using this were basically due to the study of revelation and sunnah and so on. But the techniques, the methods, the tools seem to be very sophisticated given the time that these tools were employed when Islamic religious sciences were developed in the beginning of Islamic century. So I think that need to be taken into account when we talk about integration of techniques. We cannot simply ignore what have been employed and implemented and used by our scholars in the development of sciences. And today, since what is dominant in our time is modern knowledge methods, including the scientific methods and so on. So we know there are merits also in this. So we need to also see how both we can benefit from both techniques. Integration also takes place at the level of, we know that reality needs to be seen, particularly when we are talking about society. What ought to be, what it should be. For example, in the previous lecture, we are talking about the ideal concept of society. Perhaps what ought to be according to, let's say, one school of thought, modern school of thought is like this, and another modern school of thought is like this. And we have talked about the ideal concept of society according to Islam as well. So that is what ought to be in terms of the concept of society. And it follows what is expected of the members of society, which we call in sociology as social actors, to do what in society. So all these have been defined, and also the what is. Normally, modern sociology focuses more on focuses their investigation or its investigation in order to know what is taking place, what is really what is really happening in society. That's why scientific methods is very much appropriate in order to know the social facts or the data in order to explain or to inform us what is actually taking place. So these are the two categories. And then in the context of Islam, we know also there are fixed principles, there are fixed teachings which are not which don't change. Whereas society and also other aspects um, are subject to changes. So dynamism in Islam is not everything changes, but the changes that take place on certain stagnant principle, the fixed principles. So then people talk about sawabit or asbut and al-mutaghayyirat, the changeable and the non-changeable aspect of religion. So it is the changeable aspect of religion that provides or defines the dynamism of religion. So the context is taken into account, even though the texts are fixed, are the same. And when we talk about epistemology, one aspect of epistemology is dealing with sources of knowledge, and we have identified broad or two categories of sources. One is the divine source, and the other one is human source, or human reason, and divine revelation. So how can we integrate this in the concept of education, of knowledge, and also in our methodology? I already talked about the text, the nusus, and the context before. When knowledge develop as sciences, by now we should have, by now we already have what we call Islamic religious sciences, and the other category of sciences have been referred variously as acquired knowledge, intellectual knowledge, reason-based knowledge, and so on. So all this having their own merits and advantages. So how can we use this? So these are some of the, and also how we integrate values in knowledge, because sometimes we quite frequently we have heard about knowledge is value free and so on. So but from Islamic perspective, knowledge should be imbued with values. But what does it mean by that, and how we can do this? So I think these are some of the elements and aspects that we need to consider when we talk about integration. So integrated knowledge and integrated methodology will have to be based on this, among others. Now, let us look at the how this may be what you call this operationalized, so that it it develops from conceptual stage to operational stage, and in between we have methodological stage or level. So if we want to rephrase, perhaps we can talk about here, what do we mean by concept of Islamic knowledge? Earlier on, when we talk about Islamic epistemology, perhaps we have to differentiate. Islamic concept of knowledge, that is number one, which is, to me, Islamic epistemology. And on the basis of Islamic epistemology, then we can talk about concept of Islamic knowledge. I think this is quite tricky. We have two terms. One is Islamic concept of knowledge, that is Islamic epistemology. And second one is concept of Islamic knowledge. So in the basis of Islamic epistemology, what is Islamic knowledge to you? So here is where we find even in the Muslim what you call this communities, they are not the same in terms of their understanding about what is actually Islamic knowledge. So because their understanding is different, so this has been translated into different system of education. Even that education is called Islamic education as well, but the contents may not be the same. I will show you after this how this understanding gives impact on the system Islamic system of education. So let us look further on this. So therefore, we are talking about what perspective do you have, or what concept do you have about what is Islamic knowledge to you? So among Muslim communities as well, we can see the different understanding or different perspective, I would say, because at the level of the recognition of, let's say, revelation as one source of knowledge and so on, this is not the problem. But when this is translated into understanding, therefore, this is what is where it is different. So let us look at the number one. As I said, Muslims, generally speaking, this is shared, this is common, this is uniform. And I mean that Islamic concept of knowledge, whereby we can talk about, or we can say as Islamic epistemology, where under Islamic epistemology, we talk about what is the purpose of knowledge, sources of knowledge, and how knowledge is classified, and other aspects. Now, on this, I think all Muslims agree. All Muslims agree. Now, when it goes to further detail, let us look at this. Of course, we can restate this. We can restate this in a different way, but that is the same thing. Now, therefore, when we talk about what is Islamic knowledge to some people, then perhaps here is where we may find different perspectives. Let us look at this. Model number one. Model number one. So we retain, let's say, purpose and sources and so on. So maybe depending on how you describe, maybe the purpose of knowledge is to get the pleasure of Allah, mardatillah, and consent of Allah, mardatillah, for example. Yeah. And then, but for some, okay, that is the emphasis. That is the emphasis. Therefore, the aim is mainly hasanah fil akhirah, good life in the hereafter. So the stress, even though hasanah fid dunya, there is good life in the world, is also expected, but it's not really given greater emphasis. As a result, what is considered to be what you call the main source of knowledge is only divine revelation. This does not imply that they necessarily deny the other source, but the overwhelming stress or emphasis is on divine revelation. And therefore, the system of education is the system that only, let's say, if you open a school and you have this concept of concept of knowledge, then if you want to open a school or establish a school, that school offers only Islamic religious sciences. Yeah, only Islamic religious sciences. So we have seen in the history or in our own community, particularly after the colonial period, in Muslim societies, there are a system which offer only Islamic sciences, no modern sciences, for example. So this is one model. You see how our understanding of that might have led to its operation in that system. Yeah? Now, model number two, of course, this is secular system. This is secular system whereby the purpose of knowledge is only hasanah fid dunya mainly, and sources of knowledge, human reason, and the sciences that are offered in school, in university, in the system is modern sciences, natural sciences, social sciences, and so on. So Islamic studies here, Islamic knowledge appear in the form of subjects offered within this, including here Islamic religious sciences. So under secular system, secular school, yes, religious subject may be offered, but it is part of one of the many subjects. But the overall system of education is not what it calls as it's not guided by this. It is under modern secular system. So you can see how if this perception is there, then you can see the different model. The third model is where, in terms of purpose of knowledge, yes, pleasure of Allah, and pleasure of Allah is sought with the intention of trying to get or struggle to gain good life in the here in this world and good life in the hereafter. Good life in the world and good life in the hereafter. This is the aim. Could be even in the understanding that this should be the aim or the purpose of knowledge. As a result, therefore, sources of knowledge we need to utilize both the divine sources and also the human sources. So the sciences that develop out of these two sources of knowledge, that is Islamic religious sciences and modern natural social sciences and other sciences, are offered in the school, for example, in the system. But they are like a parallel. So there is no real what you call this organic integration. They exist, but it may not be integrated in certain way. So that perspective of knowledge or Islamic knowledge might have ended up with the establishment of either school or education system reflecting this nature. Now, let us look at this. What perhaps this might be one way of looking at real integrated knowledge. Even though we'll see whether there are still some discrepancies at this illustration, but as far as I can see up to this point, this could be one of the illustration of an integrated knowledge concept, whereby in terms of purpose of knowledge, the generic one is to get pleasure of Allah, but specific one is the knowledge that we have should lead us to getting a good life in this world and good life in the hereafter. So that should be the purpose. Now, if that is the purpose, that should be translated into actual implementation. Now, we mentioned earlier on, and even in many literature, even though there are two categories of sources, one is divine source or divine revelation, the other one is human reason. But in this case, the first thing, the divine revelation takes precedence over human reason in terms of providing Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology. Yeah, in terms of providing Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology, that should come from divine revelation. So that is why I put here. So source of knowledge, the first one is divine revelation, which provide Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology. That is the basic ideas about God, about man, about universe, about knowledge, and so on. Yeah? Now, and then that will be the what I call it, underlying thoughts. The underlying thoughts. Now, and then again, divine revelation and human reason will be consulted when we are dealing with any subject matter. So, for example, in dealing with Islamic religious sciences, maybe the greater role is played by divine revelation. Divine revelation. In dealing with natural social sciences, the greater role might be played by human reason. I'm using the word greater role because there could also be occasions or places whereby human reason plays role also in dealing with revealed knowledge. And there could also be occasions whereby divine revelation plays its role in dealing with natural social sciences. So this is what I say, the two levels of what you call it, two types of roles of divine revelation. One is providing the Islamic worldview. Second, where relevant, to provide input, teachings, principle pertaining to the specific subject matter. For example, in our case, we are talking about society. And here is where I can see the logic of Afzalur Rahman when he mentioned about the hints and tips in the Quran regarding society. So there is the context. So if that is the case, you have seen the different possibilities and also different realities of conceptualization or the formulation of the concept of Islamic knowledge, understanding about Islamic knowledge, and subsequently or consequently, it may have some implication on the type of education and school that we have based on these different perspectives on what we mean by Islamic knowledge. So again, let's say, for example, if to one person, Islamic knowledge means only learning Islamic religious sciences, then the school will reflect that. So something like this. And vice versa, whereby if you believe that Islamic knowledge means the integration or the involvement of both Islamic religious sciences as well as Islamic modern sciences, for example, then the school or the system will include this in the system and in the school. Now, so let us look at the application of integrated knowledge and integrated methodology at institutional level. Knowledge itself is abstract, so it can only be explained perhaps through certain actual example. So I just want to perhaps, since I am more familiar with the place where I have been teaching here, International Islamic University, perhaps this could be one model. I believe there are many other models out there in the Muslim world, but this is one of the examples, one of the models, one of the perhaps experiments to implement Islamic or the concept of Islamic or Islamic concept of integrated knowledge and how this is translated into actual education system. Now, so the first one is application at institutional level. The illustration here is by taking my own Department of Sociology and Anthropology at the International Islamic University. So how, for example, this philosophy of education and concept of knowledge is translated into actual academic program. So this is the application part, but this application is at institutional level. Yeah. So for example, if we are talking about curriculum, there are two sides. One is co-curriculum or co-curriculum, and also the other one is curriculum. I just focus on curriculum here. Of course, the structure of a curriculum is determined by the ministry of the respective country. Yeah? So in our case, we have Ministry of Higher Education, which provide us with certain guidelines, and the components of our curriculum are reflective of the policies of the ministry, which are adopted also by the university. So under this, we have, for example, each undergraduate student will have to take, but this one I do not know what version here, maybe the earlier one, but still, I just want to show you example of how we can incorporate this as in the case of what is practiced at this university. So we have, for example, a fundamental courses, and then the generic skill courses, major courses, specialization courses, and elective courses. I don't want to talk about this because the first one, for example, since in our the structure of our faculty, we have reflected already this structure even in the establishment of the faculty. Maybe I can illustrate a little bit here. In many universities, faculty of social science and faculty of Islamic studies, they are separate faculties, right? I think many universities do like that. But in this university, they establish what they call as the faculty of revealed knowledge, knowledge and human sciences. So as you can see, even the name of the faculty, which we call Kuliah, is reflective of this integration. So not Review knowledge refers to Islamic sciences, and human sciences is the social sciences in perhaps many universities. But in this university, this is one faculty. So it has, of course, two divisions. One is Islamic Review knowledge, and the other one is human sciences or social sciences. And each of these, they have uh, several departments. I think 6 departments under social science and 5 departments under IRK or Islamic Review knowledge. And one of the department under social science is Department of Sociology and Anthropology, where I have been teaching here. So if you look at this structure, even at the establishment level, you will find that integration takes place in the formation of the faculty itself, whereby Islamic studies and also social sciences are not two separate faculties, but they are two divisions within one faculty. So when we design our curriculum here, so we also ask our students to take subject from Islamic Review knowledge, and Islamic Review knowledge who are majoring here will have to take also subject from human science, psychology or sociology or communication or others. So that is the how the concept of integrated knowledge is experimented and tried to be implemented through the structure of the curriculum. So if you can see here, the elective, I just want to highlight the objective. All the other courses like fundamental courses and major courses, specialized courses, they are all the standard subjects in sociology that are offered all over the world, a standard one. Yeah? You have, for example, sociology of work, and then what you call this, all those things. Yeah? So, sociology and also anthropology. And the elective one, where we ask our student to take this. And this is from the other division. There is Islamic Review Knowledge Division, Islamic Studies Division, meaning that students have to take either I mean, some of this from the usul fiqh, some of this from fiqh, some of this from usuluddin, some of this from others. So meaning that social science or a student majoring in any social science subject like sociology or social science program like sociology or psychology or communication or political science, any of this, they have to take elective courses from Islamic religious studies. And vice versa, those who are majoring in usul fiqh, for example, or in usuluddin, they also have to take their elective in social science. So this is how we try to expose our students to the nature of learning and also nature of courses from the two different categories, so that they will be enlightened as to what could be the different ways of understanding issues. So that is one way of doing that. So if we look at the university, how university or how our department, SOCA here stand for Sociology and Anthropology. So if you look at the mission of the university, the mission of the university have been summarized in 4 words. One is integration. Second is Islamization. Third is internationalization, and fourth is comprehensive excellence. So at the level of department, we try to incorporate to implement the mission of integration by including Islamic review knowledge subjects to be taken by our social science student or sociology students. At the same time, we also introduce new courses on society, but not typical in the standard sociology study. For example, we have introduced, for example, Islamic perspective of sociology and anthropology, something like this, and others. So these are some of the ways that we can do. Now we move on. Let me check my time. Yes, nearly 10:20. So another example is in research, applying integrated method in the study of society. I brought this to you that before we investigate each of the issues and aspects in society, perhaps we need to be equipped with the concept of man in the Quran. Then we can go to this each of these aspects to be studied. That is one way of doing it. And as you can see that Muslim social scientists equipped with Islamic worldview will investigate each of these from the normal scientific investigation, like what we are doing now. But then you can also add, that is by adding Islamic input where relevant. Otherwise, the use of scientific investigation, which is universal, is considered to be Islamic already, because as we mentioned in the last class, logics, rational thinking or way, it never cut off from revelation, and it did not lead to, let's say, if you use rationality, it does not lead to rationalism in the Western understanding or secular understanding, because the use of reason is part and parcel of what is encouraged by revelation. So it is in this context that we are talking about that. Now, what if we want to design a research for analyzing a contemporary social issue using integrated methodology? So perhaps what can be done is for us to choose one aspect of sociology or one aspect, for example, social problem. Under social problem, let's say the issue that is prevailing now is on COVID-19, and one of the problem that arises due to this is the suicide. Suicide has been studied in modern sociology as well. So you can investigate that scientifically, but at the same time, you can also, if where relevant, include Islamic input. But in terms of designing research project based on the scientific way, it is the same. It is the same. So there is no different in terms of studying what is. What is. I think these are the things that I would like to mention. So I stop here for us to exchange ideas. I call this not question and answer session, but sharing ideas, because I believe, as I did mention in the first class, when I know from the data that I collected from the survey before we started our class, all of us have different backgrounds. Some are from Islamic studies, some are from sociology, some are neither here nor there in terms of this. But most of you are from having master's degree, PhD degree as well, and then undergraduate. So I believe I need to also learn from all of you in terms of what I have presented to you. So I welcome your ideas in this interactive session, inshallah. So I think I hand over back to you, Brother Shahran, so that I hope this will conclude the last lesson that we have. Thank you very much for now.
Thank you so much, Prof. You have wrapped it up nicely with the practical effort that being done at the university, so that we can see how these ideas accumulated together and transform it into a practical studies where we can produce the student. We try to avoid to use the word product, but for lack of a better word, these are the product of this worldview, where we have a holistic student or wholesome student who master both reveal and this both knowledge, alhamdulillah. So we have unmuted everyone. You can unmute yourself. Prof, can we stop your sharing?
Oh, sure. Okay.
Okay, so I can see the, okay. Yeah. If you can open your video, and then I can invite your name, or you can just, I see Brother Abdul Basit there, Brother Sulaiman. I can call based on the video that on my screen. Brother Sulaiman, first, you want to say something about the classes that we have been doing? Can you introduce yourself briefly, Brother Sulaiman? You can unmute yourself. Can or cannot? Let me see. Allow participant. Go ahead, Brother Sulaiman. Okay.
Brother Shahran, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
I am Sulaiman from Tanzania. It has been so nice to be with you. In fact, I have come across with the sociology of Islamic sociology. My educational ground is sociology, but in a secular. I was not been taken, and I've been taken in a sociology of religion as a student, but this time I'm very, very, very conversant now with the sociology. Being from the sociology of secular and being now introduced with the sociology of Islam, it was been very great and very educative for me. It's very nice.
Okay, Sulaiman. I see here.
And of course, I'm planning now to have my PhD now on the sociology of religion. I mean, sociology of Islamic sociology.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you, Brother Sulaiman, for your feedback. Thank you.
I see there, Brother Abdullah Rahman. If you would like to say something, I call those who are the video is on. Sister Jamalia, can you unmute?
Yes, can.
Okay, good. Yeah, go ahead if you want to say something. You don't have to open your video.
Okay. Assalamualaikum, Prof. Hazizan. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm alien actually from not from UIA. But yes, I've been following this actually. Thank you for having me in. I have one question, Prof. My study is about Islamophobia actually. So I wanted to see how actually I can integrate this study to one of secular, secular theoretical stuff. Is I'm looking on host and guest relationship, some kind of customer service in hospitality industry. So if you can have a few ideas how might I can integrate the ideas, because I find it for me is very still for 7 weeks. I don't think it's sufficient for me to understand the whole thing. But I have a little bit idea. I only did if you can enlighten a little bit more.
What ideas do you have? What ideas do you already have?
I have here is is actually I'm bringing up. There is 4. I read someone. I couldn't remember the scholar books, but I pretty remember it's based on the 4 main ideas. The ideas is to have. You hold on, Prof. I have to open my book.
It's okay, sister.
Based on the idea how to be, how can I ease the Islamophobic in hospitality, in like at the moment we have issue like especially those with hijab or those with the beard or whatever. Introduction about Muslim Islamophobia is something, is a great issue, especially in the West at the moment. So I want to see whether how to ease this thing, especially when we go to the airport, we have to go through the check-in procedure, the investigative stuff, a very long time. Not maybe for Malaysian, but for mostly Muslim women having experienced this kind of treatment.
Okay, I hope I get you roughly. Forgive me if I have not gotten full what you have mentioned. You mentioned about Islamophobia as one of the social realities nowadays, and it has also been there for a long time. But in scientific investigation, let me put it this way: when we would like to know certain phenomenon in society like Islamophobia and so on, it is not a question of we for example give our undigested thoughts about this, but normally it has to be founded upon, or it has to be grounded upon certain facts, and that is why any issue in society that we would like to understand, even scientifically, that is sociologically, for example, will have to be laid down correctly and appropriately using the scientific way of understanding it. For example, if you talk about Islamophobia, number one, there are so many, works and research and also articles already written. And therefore, we have to go through all this literature, what we call literature review, in order to know what has been investigated on Islamophobia. And normally, our literature review will have certain purpose. One of the purpose is to know the gap. That is, even though there are many works already done on this, but what is left for us to investigate? If, for example, in your research, as we know, in the research design and research proposal, we had to include also what we call research objective and research question. So if, let's say, in the research question, you want to investigate the factors, let's say, or what you have currently in your mind is the factors that lead to Islamophobia. And the second one is the circumstances that might have contributed to the Islamophobia, the rise of Islamophobia, for example. Let's say you have listed 2 or 3 or 4 objectives. But upon review of literature, you'll find many people have written on this. So if your research is only to use secondary data, you can use all this in order to make or to come up with the list of, let's say, the list of factors that might have contributed to this. But if you want to get your primary data in order to study the phenomenon of Islamophobia in your respective countries or your respective place, then the research design will have to be done differently. While literature review is meant for finding the gap in the current literature, whether people have done it or not, that is one thing. But when you want to do research on your own in order to know the aspects of Islamophobia which are not yet covered by the current literature, naturally what you perhaps have to do is to design the research that will enable you to be collecting new data about, let's say, Islamophobia in your workplace. You may be adopting certain instruments and tools, for example, interview and others. So what I'm trying to say here is that the study of Islamophobia, in order to come up with certain information about Islamophobia, will have to be very specific in terms of what we want to investigate, how we want to investigate, what is the place or the research site that we want to go. So from there, I think then it can go, it can move on. Many of these will be more informed by our review of literature. For example, even if you want to adopt what would be the most appropriate approach in trying to understand that, maybe either qualitative or quantitative research, for example. So lots of other variables in the scientific way. But conducting scientific study on Islamophobia itself cannot be said to be un-Islamic, because that is what we want to discover. But what you want to discover here is what is. While what ought to be is there shouldn't be Islamophobia in the first place. There shouldn't be Islamophobia. Yes. But what the reality is that there is Islamophobia. That's why we need to know. In order to know, we have to conduct scientific study. So excelling in the scientific study of Islamophobia itself is what I call considered to be part of our duty. So you don't have to, for example, even include if there is no necessity any inclusion of, let's say, you want to find from the Quran about this. If you want to include or find relevant one, could be there, but the inclusion should not be mechanical, but it should be based on what is necessary. Otherwise, scientific study of social phenomena is enough, even without connecting to what I call is the what comes from revelation in this respect. That is my view. Yes.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Oh, welcome. Thank you.
I see Brother Abdul Basit raising the hand. Brother, you want to ask question? Please unmute yourself.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Prof, I'm speaking from Ghana. I'm a Ghanaian. I first of all want to thank Shahran and all the organizers of this wonderful impacting of knowledge. We've been here almost a month now. In fact, it's so wonderful to be with this kind of platform. Prof, my issue has to do with the sociology and that of Islam, the integration of the two issues. Because from the way we listen to you right from the start up to date, my understanding is that we may have differences between the two, but they are almost one, in the sense that whatever is revealed, at the other side is what human with rationality has been able to come out with. Therefore, we try to integrate what is revealed with what the rational human intellect has been able to come out with. Therefore, with those of us in the more or less a secular sort of society, I mean, Ghana, for example, we can't talk about Muslim being dominant. We may say we are minority, and therefore the education curriculum, so many things is based on secularism. Now, how do we, as Muslims in Ghana, how do we try in our small way to integrate Islam into the basis of education, and that, for that matter, the classrooms, the curriculum, and what have you, using sociology?
Yeah, Prof.
Prof.
Okay. Thank you very
I believe
much.
I've not confused. Yes.
Yes, I try not to be confused by what I have. But anyway, I really, first of all, I thank you for the question. It is really a practical and real question on the ground. Certainly, when we talk about this, we don't view things are all the same at all places. I always stress on the importance of context. In fact, we have to differentiate also between the ideal thing that we can do and also the reality on the ground. Yeah? For example, as much as we would like to apply the religious principles at all levels, individual and also societal level, but our contexts are not the same. There are places whereby like you mentioned, the system of education is very secular, and in some other places, maybe Islamic. Even the word secular Islamic, sometimes I don't feel comfortable also if we view it from the Islamic point of view, because that's why I was stressing on the importance of having Islamic worldview and Islamic epistemology. I stress that because from Tawheed, there is belief in oneness. We start with one. There is belief in the oneness of God and God as a creator, and He created everything. Now, and then God create what you call this universe, and God also, a part of the universe is man, human, we. Now, for us to understand the reality, we are given revelation. So therefore, what Revelation says and what we discover about universe using our mind, our logics, our rationality, our scientific investigation, by right, there should not be contradiction. There should not be contradiction. Maybe scientific finding should not contradict with what our Quran says. That is the ideal part. But however, when we come to the reality, we have to study our community, our society. I mean, this is my humble opinion. What our society needs. What our society needs. For example, I have gone to different places in here. I went to Trinidad, I went to Philippines, I went to Thailand, I went to many places as well. And I could see the different realities of Muslim communities there. In some places, talking about this is too big already for them. So that is why when I observe, perhaps priority should be what you call is, in some places the priority should be how to make the Muslim community over there understand the basic knowledge of Islam. We focus on the Fardu Ain first, what we call. If they don't know even what Islamic pillars are, what the pillars of Iman are, and what more to expect them to practice, I think in terms of education, the stress should be on that. In terms of implementation, but in terms of our own global concept of education, yes, we have integration of this at all levels. But in terms of implementation, we have to look at the reality. If the reality seems to be that even at the level of basic education and practice, the what you call this, the knowledge of personal religious obligation has not been settled yet, then I think the priority should be addressed to that, so that we can utilize resources at the maximum by targeting what is needed in that particular thing. But we keep the global concept of what you call is knowledge, integrated knowledge in mind. But when we go for implementation, we don't implement at all levels, but focus on what is needed first. I think that is and in order to know that, only we know, because we are at the place. So like what the Prophet has mentioned, Antum a'lamu bi umuri dunyakum, you know better your world. So what is more, what should be given priority, what should not be given priority, given the limited resources that we have. I think implementation wise can be gradual, can be partial, but in terms of understanding should be global. So global concept, but gradual and partial implementation, depending on the context. I think that is more realistic to address. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Jazakumullah khairan.
Prof, there are two questions. One from Brother Rakib. Prof, if there a short course, 1-year program for graduate student at IUM on Islamic worldview that will allow the student to better integrate into postgraduate studies, especially for students from Western universities. And the other question, last question from Brother Ahmad Fatin. I just want to ask, in your opinion, as a scholar in sociology, how do you see the state of the society in Malaysia, particularly in achieving unity in diversity in terms of religion, culture, and thought?
Okay, I will try my best to firstly understand your question and secondly to address based on what I understand. Okay, a short course in IIUM or in International Islamic University, there are different entities within the universities which offer some courses. I am not aware of whether Islamic worldview course is available to be offered for public, but maybe I can check that later on. But there are some courses. For example, language courses are many, and also other things. But for students, we have compulsory course on Islamic worldview and also Islam knowledge and civilization. This is a compulsory course at the university level. All students, regardless of their specialization, medicine or engineering or architecture, they have to take this. So I am sorry because since I am no longer in the administration, so I am quite cut off from the latest development in the university. But there are entities. Perhaps my little advice is perhaps you can browse the university website and try to see maybe the different sections in the university which might offer this short course. I remember, for example, one, maybe you can check this also, what they call IIUM Academy. Academy. There is the section in the university which offer many courses for the public, for outsiders. In fact, some PhD students also, they are not really coming to the university, but they are doing PhD, I think, through this distant learning and so on. So this is perhaps one place where you can. And sorry, as I was jotting down, I mean dry up, so I couldn't find. Sister Fatin asked about the state of what? Society?
The state of society in Malaysia.
The state of society in Malaysia, and then?
Particularly in achieving unity in diversity, in terms of religion, culture, and thought.
Okay, We are at the moment, I think in the world, let me talk about the world. Our world now, Muslim world, I'm talking about Muslim world, and I have already conducted a study and I have published a paper as well, because I normally would like to see things from the big picture first, and because big picture will give us overall holistic picture, and then we go to the specific. Muslim world in general, as we have what you call, where we have understood at this stage, in a stage of history, is at the very, low in terms of achievements in almost all areas, And therefore, I think discussion about how to go out from this underdevelopment and lack of progress and so on have been discussed a lot. Now, one of the problems that Muslim world is facing is the problem of unity. It is quite unfortunate because we are talking about Tawheed, we are talking various levels of unity, but Muslim unity in contemporary time, Muslim society is not reflecting this in their real life, almost at all levels. Particularly when things involve certain what you call is interest and so on. So we must recognize, or we must accept the fact that in contemporary time, Muslims are lacking behind in almost all aspects, including unity aspect. Yeah, unity aspect. That is one thing. So I have come up with data in my published paper. I investigated certain aspects, for example, in terms of science and the achievement in science and technology, achievements in the economic aspect of the Muslim world, and so on. But all this data shows that we Muslims are left behind. Now, it does not only happen at a global level. When we go to a specific country as well, like Malaysia as well, so we could see also the sign of this unity. When we are united in terms of having the same source of reference, the Quran, we read the Quran every day, for example. We are united in terms of having the same practice. We pray every day. We are united at that level. Now, every Muslim pray, every Muslim fast, every Muslim read the Quran. Alhamdulillah. I mean, at that level, we are basically united. But at the social level, there are lots to be desired, in the sense that in many sectors, in many aspects of society, in economic aspect, what more in political aspect. Political aspect has made us very worried nowadays. And I think what you call this, investigation or scientific investigation need to be done in order to identify. More or less we know, but in order to go deeper into the root cause of this unity, we need to study. Yeah? However, there are so many variables, there are so many factors which might have contributed to the disunity among Muslims. However, generally speaking, we are still we are still in the situation whereby the things are not that bad, in the sense that there are rooms for improvement, except that it requires the cooperation of all parties, the sacrifices of all parties. By parties, I mean all sectors, all quarters, to improve us. Now, this is not something easy to be done, but in addition to the various efforts that we have to do in order to bring people together and make them aware of the greater challenges that Muslims are facing compared to the communal and personal interests. So if this awareness can be made, can be made known, I think even though it is a challenge, but we have to do we have to take efforts in order to improve the situation. So all quarters are responsible. Academics, they may have to study and come up with the proper solutions. Those who are involved in the administration will also have to realize this and try to establish cooperation and also sacrifices and so on. But I think in addition to this, I must also say this. Sometimes we forget, including when we are facing COVID-19. Yes, we will do as much as possible as our ikhtiyar, as our human effort to do that. But our attachment to God must always be there. So the dua, the spiritual efforts needs to be enhanced together with what we can do as human in order to, because at the end of the day, even if as much as we want things to happen that we like, but if Allah does not permit that to happen, then all the human efforts may not be coming to fruition. Allahu alam. That is my humble response on this.
Thank you, Prof. Before we close, we invite you again, Prof, for final remarks for the whole session. 1 or 2 minutes.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank the organizer and also the moderator for giving me a chance to know our colleagues, Muslims and non-Muslim as well, from all over the world. Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much. Secondly, I must say that there certainly be discrepancies and shortcomings here and there in various forms. So I would like to seek your forgiveness for that. If you find some mistakes or errors which you need to let me know, please, by all means, let me know either through the institute or directly to me. And I pray for all to be blessed and also to be safe in all situations. One thing that I want to say here is that however little knowledge that might be there, the most important thing is we hope this knowledge is blessed by God. Because even if we have lots of knowledge, but it is not blessed, then that may not be good for us as well. And I hope whatever is given, a little bit that I have with you, I pray to Allah to accept this. And as we all know, that when we leave this world, we leave everything except 3 things, including the beneficial knowledge, the knowledge that is benefited by others. So if it is there, a little knowledge, a little useful knowledge that you can gain, I say Alhamdulillah, and please spread to others as well, so that everybody can benefit from this. So what is good come from Allah, and what is deficient come from me. Thank you very much. I see you again. May Allah protect us and bless us so that we can get good life in this world and in hereafter. Wallahu a'lam. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi. Alhamdulillah. Including last year and this year, now we have 14 lectures by Prof. We will package these lectures, and then we'll promote this series to all the professors, lecturers who are teaching sociology through our network of universities. In Malaysia, we have network of Islamic universities, public universities, government, private universities. In Indonesia, we have this network of Universitas Islam, we have Muhammadiyah Network, and so on and so forth. So inshallah, hopefully this series of lectures will benefit the lecturers as well as the student. We thank you all friends who have been with us. I now can remember the names, Sister Jamalia, Pak Gunardi, and the rest, Brother Ibrahim, always joining our class. Hope to see you again in other classes, inshallah. Thank you so much, Prof. We'll keep in touch. Thank you, everyone. Salam.
Assalamualaikum. Thank you.